Welcome, everybody. The New York City Football Club get their first win of the season. Pascal Janssen gets his first victory as the head coach of New York City FC. 10th anniversary edition at Yankee Stadium. New York City will be back at the stadium again to play New England after a victory over Orlando City. We're going to look at all that. And Pascal admittedly paused his preparation for the game to watch AZ Alkmaar in Europa League. We'll get into that a little bit too. It's NYCFC Views Live.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. NYCFC Views.
Collins approaches the shot, and New York City wins the first MLS Cup on their first try, and they're going crazy. Tiene tiro y gol! Gol! New York City es el campeón de Major League Soccer.
The sickest New York City FC podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Well, we ain't sick, as far as we know. There's Roberto Abramowitz. I'm Glenn Crooks. We provide the radio commentary for the New York City Football Club, and got to call a win in the last match. Hey, so we're going to go over that. We're going to look at New England a little bit. Later on, we're going to react to the annual anonymous survey of MLS sporting executives that's done by The Athletic. I think it's fun, and 21 out of 30 clubs responded. Have no idea if New York City was one of them, and I'm not going to ask. And I don't, it's not concerning me, but it's interesting. So that'll be in kicking it around a little bit later on. And a whole bunch to go over. Now, Roberto, I wanted to, well, first of all, how you doing? Everything good?
Everything is great. I picked up my car. It looks shiny new. They did a fantastic job, Glenn. I suggest you do that with your Honda. Your Honda will appreciate it.
On the way home, I stopped and actually gave my car a mud bath, so it's just completely brown now instead of white.
You and I have the total different approach on cars.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry you had to get in.
Your car would love me.
I'm sorry that you had to get into my dirty car today too. But it was only for a few minutes. Hey, so
I appreciate the ride.
Before we get into the, I just find stories like this really fun to learn, and really just learn something today. I think you did too, because Pascal Janssen, head coach of New York City, said after the game. So if we watched his post-game interview, we don't usually see it live because we're up there in our radio booth, but he made some mention that Yankee Stadium, one of his former CEOs, and I just I didn't really think about it until he brought it up again today. So the whole thing is, the question to ask him is, hey, it's your first game at Yankee Stadium. You got the win, great, but what did you think of, all of that? And so this was part of my one-on-one, which will be part of the pregame show coming up Saturday. But here was his response, Roberto, and then we want to identify this person a little bit more thoroughly after the clip here. Go ahead. Initial impressions of a soccer match at Yankee Stadium in the technical area, where your Mehdi Belushi has to climb over the boards to get you his messaging. But what did you think?
It was impressive. Being in the Yankee Stadium overall is something that was a very, very good experience. I was very excited to be there. Historic stadium. A former CEO of mine was a former Yankee player, so he told me many stories about the Yankees and the stadium. And to be part of the stadium now and play the home opener like we did was really nice.
I heard you say that after the game. Who's the former Yankee player?
Robert Eenhoorn, former player. Yeah. Dutch Yankee.
So he was at Alkmaar?
Yeah, he was my CEO at Alkmaar. Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
At least he's maybe at least one person from the Netherlands who's excited about you coaching at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, being in the U.S. Overall and being in the MLS, coaching in the Yankee Stadium. And once I sent him the pictures of being in the stadium, he told me to go and visit the museum, because apparently there's something there from him as well. So,
aha.
Yeah.
Now, all due respect to Robert Eenhoorn, who, interesting fun fact, he was the last guy to play shortstop before Derek Jeter played and made his debut. So that was it for him. But that pretty much ended it right there. When
a Willie Pep moment of sorts.
Yeah, Willie Pep, who had a headache for the Yankees in like 1927, and this young kid named Lou Gehrig came on, and he didn't come off the field for the next like 2,100 and however many games. So it's the Wally Pip story. Yeah, a little bit of that. He was the first. So this is Robert Einhorn. He was the first Dutch player to hit a home run in Major League Baseball since 1912. He hit it with the Yankees. It was his only home run in Major League Baseball. His lifetime batting average was .239.
At least it was above the Mendoza line.
So I don't know exactly what's going to be in this museum. Maybe it'll be that. Maybe there's a little note saying he was the last guy to play shortstop before Derek Jeter took over. But I have to follow up with Pascal on this, because the other baseball side of this is that Azad Alkmaar brought in Billy Beane. So this guy, this former Yankee, Einhorn, brought in Billy Beane to work within the club, and we know he's Moneyball. And Alkmaar, they've been one of the best at developing young players and then selling them and then finding the next crew. And that's what old Billy Beane did with Oakland, right?
Yes, he did. But Oakland, I believe, won championships with him. Alkmaar today was eliminated by Spurs by a score of 3-1 after they had beaten Spurs 1-0 on the first leg.
It was really a wild game, though, right? The Alkmaar still had chances to send it into extra time, a couple of really good chances, and Spurs also had their opportunities. I thought it was a fun game. And I was happy to watch it. And I was trying to watch it closely, but I'd say I watched half of it really closely because I wanted to see how Alkmaar was playing. And it was a straight 4-3-3. And they defended so well as a group and played more counterattack football than building and creating, which is what they needed to do on the road against a team with deeper talent. I calculated it. Their starting lineup, 22.5 years old. That was the average age.
Wow.
With a 20-year-old goalkeeper, a 20-year-old center back, and the other two backs were 22 and 27. Now, the only and 22 and a half years old, but somebody who really elevated that number, their captain, Klasi, he's 33 years old, so he kind of screwed up the the average.
But that's pretty good. I mean, you look at that, and that's a lot of young talent, and they're going to do exactly what you said they're going to do, right? Which is basically form them and then sell them, and that's a business model, and it's a successful one for a lot of teams, which is what a lot of MLS teams really want to emulate.
And New York City Football Club is one of them, and they have a 20-year-old also, who apparently was late to the stadium in some respect. Agu Ojeda was scheduled to start. The digital team put it up, they put up the starting lineup when it's announced, and then all of a sudden it got turned over. So, I don't think we'll ever know, and it's not really our business other than, Pascal's been very open about, the team is greater than the individual, and we had to take care of it. He was on the bench. He came in the second half, and he said, look, it's not forgotten, but we've talked about it, and it's over. So now you proceed. And that's exactly the way to handle a situation like this. Penalize a young man, you have to. I mean, that's a massive penalty to lose your starting spot. Now, we don't know if he'll start it on Saturday, but Hannes Wolf scores the game-winning goal. Remember, he was starting for Wolf. Wolf scores the game-winning goal, and maybe, how did Pascal describe it today? It's like a bottle of ketchup. Once it starts, you turn it over, and once it starts running, it keeps running, or however he phrased it. I had never heard that before, but that's what he hopes from Hannes Wolf.
It's probably a translation from some sort of Dutch saying.
Yeah. So, so Wolf gets the game winner. New York City, the wins at 2-1. So the first Pascal clip I want to play, and Shane, will you confirm that you have this? I sent it, and I don't think we reviewed it in our little pre-pod briefing. But there's a clip in here from Pascal talking about the losing the lead. New York City up 1-0, 1-1, giving up a goal. It's not as late as the first two games, Roberto. And okay, you don't have that. So I'll just have to paraphrase. Basically what he said is when in the 69th minute, Muriel tied it up, Martinez had scored 1-1. I don't know about you in your broadcast facility, but I think Maddie and I were, our hearts sank just for at least a moment, like, oh no, this is what happened in the opening 2 games where you lost 3 points because of late goals, but they come back 2 minutes later, tied up, and then go back ahead.
Go ahead,
and that's the winning goal by Wolf. So, and he said he wasn't worried at all. So we'll have to trust that's the way he was. He wasn't worried.
Good, but we still don't know how the lineup is going to be, if he's going to stick to what he did last week or what he intended to do last week, and puts Ojeda out there, and then Wolf is on the bench. Look, Micha Ilinic scored a great goal in Miami, and game 2 in LA, he was on the bench and Tavon Gray was starting. And then Gray got hurt and was replaced in the 7th minute by Ilinic, who then played again very, very well. And he played well again last week. We're seeing a lot of improvement in Ilinic, who's definitely not shy about shooting, which is good coming from the right side, because Wolf's issue, more than anything else, is that he's really shy about shooting. And so, you have this dichotomy where your right back is more aggressive offensively than your right wing.
Well, as long as they're in coordination, if Ilinic gets ahead of him, then, it could work out. Well, so we were up at training today, and you'll see here some of the early stages of it. This is, I think, Matt Freese just serving his own goalkeepers a little bit here. And Shane, if you could just roll some of that B-roll stuff from training today. And, there's Freese. But you mentioned Ilinic and his goal scoring. He scored an unbelievable goal in training. I don't know if you were there at that time. I know because we go in and out sometimes. I mean, it was, the upper left corner, stroked from about 18 yards out. And just to reinforce what you were saying about his assertiveness when both in games and in training, apparently, too. So we'll see what happens with Ilinic. I will say this. Matty Lawrence, my broadcast partner, said that he felt the team played so well, and they did. They played very well for a majority of the time, that he wouldn't make any changes. That means Johnny Shore would start again. That means Justin Hack would start in the back for Burke Risa. So, we'll see. Risa's back. I mean, he was ill. He and Maxi were ill with the same – I don't know what happened, but there was some illness through the team. Risa couldn't get through it. Maxi played almost 90 minutes and was a pretty important part of it. So I don't know how that illness is affecting.
The only thing we do know that's not going to happen is that Kevin O'Toole is not going to play because he got red carded. And so most likely we'll see Carvalho play there.
What a great segue, Roberto. Here's Pascal Janssen talking a little bit about Nico Cavallo, who is more than likely to start in place of Kevin O'Toole on the left. Cavallo more than any of us, with training included. What kind of scouting report can you give on him? I mean, what's your evaluation? What could you share with supporters as to your expectation?
Very talented. Like what you guys call here a unicorn. We got really lucky drafting him from college, and
it's sometimes unusual that somebody, especially going at the back, somebody comes right out of school and can play.
I was told, but I don't have any history getting drafted kids into my squad, so I'm very happy to have Nico, and he very much earned his contract with the club, and now there might be this moment that he's going to start in his MLS game. Obviously, he had some play time in the away game against Miami. I've seen him play and train over the past period, also in preseason, and he did really well. His work ethic is unbelievable. The stamina this kid has is unbelievable. So we're trying to polish him to make sure his technical skills go to the next level. His deliveries from crosses, the several crosses he's able to play. But it all starts with the mindset. He's really, really engaged, and the work ethic combined with the mindset is something that stands out for Nico in this case.
interesting. I saw you kind of smile like when he talked about, he's a college kid. I don't care. I don't know anything about that stuff. Just bring him in, and I'll work with him. And if he's good enough, he'll play. So I like that. I like that attitude.
Well, one of the things that caught my attention was the fact that how we talked about his physicality over the fact that, I mean, he can basically run all day long. Now, if you're going to have somebody who's going to be playing as an outside back, then you obviously need somebody like that. But, if he's not going to be tired, he's going to be going up and down that wing. And then, we'll see if it's either Wolf or Ojeda who's going to be ahead, and if they're going to be cutting in and giving the width to Cavallo to be able to cross some balls in, which is an area where, obviously we have to see that his game has to be good.
He'll get, in preseason, he didn't have much of a chance in that Miami game to do anything on the attacking side. So he really got in nicely several occasions in preseason at Coachella. But you heard Pascal talk about delivery, and boy, how important that is. And we've seen Ilinic when he's playing well, his delivery, and how the delivery of Tavon Gray has improved. Gray, by the way, training on the side, not available. The injury, I don't want to call it a mystery. However, it seems to me that the club, it's a little bit worse than the club maybe originally anticipated, but he's definitely out for this week. Andres Pereira is still out, and he's coming off of hernia surgery. Matty Lawrence had 2 hernia surgeries, and he said, if you push it a little bit too much sometime, that this is years ago, but you can aggravate it, and it's something that will sometimes take time, and I think that's the case here with Andres Pereira. Malachi Jones is still out, and in his weekly presser, somebody asked about Malachi Jones, and Pascal gave an answer that really indicated that don't expect him back anytime soon. That was the essence of his response. So,
and it's sad to see, because you want to see him back and you want to see him playing. He was so good last year when he got his opportunity before he got injured. And Malachi, we saw him as he was leaving the facility, and he was all smiles and looked good and all that. But obviously, the leg hasn't improved to the point of where he's able to practice and then, eventually play. We hope that things get better soon for him, and that he's going to be able to, see the field at some point.
Yeah.
The only good news for New York City, as far as this is concerned, is that if there's a position of depth in New York City, it's on the wings. And so, the fact that you've got Fernandez, you've got Wolf, you've got Ojeda, you can play, you've got a lot of depth over there. So, yes, they miss him, but it's not a critical area for the team.
No, it's mostly, and we saw where he was going with his game. And, so I could even beg to differ to say, no, I think it's pretty impactful to the team, considering where his game had headed in a pretty quick trajectory. And, there's obviously been a setback in his recovery. We won't know the specifics of that, but we just wish him all the best and in getting back as soon as possible. Now,
wait, before you go there, I just want, because I want to stay on topic here, because I got a chance to interview, and in our pregame show, we're going to be talking to Agustin Ojeda, who, by the way, asked that he be called Trapito, which is a nickname that he's had since he was a kid. And Trapito means little rag. Trapo is a rag. Trapito, when you put ito, it's always like diminutive, and so it's Trapito. So we'll be using a lot of that during the game. But one of the things that he said, which is very interesting. Well, you could say Trapito. Why not?
I don't want to say little rag. I'm going to just say little rag. I'm not going to say Trapito. I'll just call him the little rag.
No, well, I don't know about that.
You gave me the translation. And you said he doesn't mind it. So.
But I think you should respect the name itself. But the point I wanted to get to was we talked about last year and the differences to this year. And he mentioned that the most important difference is that he has his family here this year. That last year was a really hard time for him to get used to, living in the United States, living in New York, language difficulties and all these things. He's very young. And, he comes over. It's a huge deal. And he says he's much more prepared for it this time, and especially having his family here. And it's really important. And so he expects to play at a much higher level than he did last season. So we're hoping that.
I think he already is. And did he specify what does family mean? Is he married? Is it are his parents?
Yeah, he said his wife.
Okay.
He said his wife is here. So
Okay.
so there you go. I was happy to hear it, and we wish him the best, and we hope to be able to see all of his talent this year, and let's see him shine. This is what New York City does. They bring in kids like this, and then they come here, they develop, they grow. In some cases, they turn into stars, and then you can sell them for absurd amount of cash.
Yeah. Well, if he's back in the good graces, and because there's a question about if Ojeda gets in over Wolf, we've kind of addressed that a little bit. But if the assessment by Pascal Janssen is, it's happened, he was penalized, and that's it. If he thinks he's the best one to go, and he mentioned about Hannes Wolf in there when we talked about Wolf today, just that we will do whatever is best for the team to win, because Wolf has 1 goal and 1 assist in his last 20 games, all competitions. His last goal before this game winner was against Orlando City last July the 20th. So, from a standpoint of attacking production, it's been dismal, to be honest. He puts in a great shift on the defensive side, which is very important for a winger in this shape. But I think you could very well see Ojeda again, but we don't know.
No, we don't know, because he said that he wasn't going to decide on his starting lineup until tomorrow. But it's important. Yes, he has a great work ethic. He's all over the field, but his main responsibility is attacking. It's not defending. And yes, he does a great job defending, but his main responsibility is attacking. And he seems to almost have like the yips when it comes to shooting. He had a great opportunity it was in the second half on the left side. He came in, all he had to do was one time the ball, and he didn't. He saw that the defender was coming, and he decided to play it inside. And then, the defense was able to get back and get in front of get behind the ball, and then an opportunity was lost. When I thought that if he had just whacked the ball, he had a really good chance to score. But he didn't. It sort of reminds me a little bit of like Mackey Sasser with the Mets, who had like the yips. And when he would throw the ball back, he couldn't just throw the ball back. He had to hit his glove with the ball first and then throw it back. And it's almost like he's got that. He's just like doesn't want to pull the trigger. He's got to pull the trigger.
You're talking about Ojeda or Wolf?
Wolf.
Oh, okay. We were talking about that whole time. I was wondering. This doesn't.
No. I was talking about Wolf. I'm sorry if I was not clear, but right. I meant Wolf.
Everybody, we're getting a lot. We're getting a lot of comments. If Roberto was not clear, please put it in there.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So we talked about Cavallo, and who got his first start as a pro was Johnny Shore, 17 years old last week. Will he be in the lineup again? So Justin Hack had his presser today. So I pulled this one clip of him talking about fellow homegrown Justin Hack a while ago. He's 24 years old. He's the first guy, this real New York City guy, Hack, and Johnny Shore, Manhattan, New York City. But here's Hack.
It's been really exciting to see him get these chances and take them so well. I always felt that he trained really well with us, and he's a kid also. He went through a little bit of adversity last year because he wouldn't always be with the first team. But he always remains humble and kept working hard, and now he has these chances. So to work with him and see him growing in the way he is really exciting, and I think we're just going to see a lot more of that from him.
All right. And he's one of his midfield mates right there, Justin Hack. In fact, if Shore progresses and Hack is not considered at the back, there's competition there, obviously, between Keaton Parks, Justin Hack, and Johnny Shore. But in particular, Johnny Shore and Justin Hack, they're more the like for like. Parks is, more of a guy that's going to get forward. He's 6'3". He's got some qualities that the other two don't have, maybe.
When you look at that position now, well, we have to remember that New York City said when we're going to be looking for players to bring in during this window, the top priority is going to be a number 6. Well, they may have that 6. They may have that 6. It may shift the balance of priorities because he continues to play the way he's playing. Yep. Then, you don't want to stop that progress. So I wouldn't be that quick to bring somebody in, let's say a veteran that would either be a backup to Hack or be in front of Hack, hopefully a backup. But I wouldn't do it maybe at this point, only because of the fact is that you want to be able to get this guy on the field and you want to be able to help him progress. And the fact that, he was man of the match in the game, it's not like you're sacrificing anything on the team when you're putting him out there. But now Burke Reese is back. The reason that Johnny Shaw was able to play was because they put Hack back on central defense, and that opened up that opportunity. But now that Burke Reese is back and healthy, then you have to wonder what he's going to do. And I don't know what Pascal's going to do if Hack is going to either be in the back line or is going to be in the 6, or is Johnny Shaw going to start, or maybe they'll put him out on, maybe they'll use left back, although we think Carvalho's really going to play there. So there's a lot of ifs. At least for us, Pascal probably knows exactly what he's doing right now and has his lineup set. But it's going to give something for New England to think about.
Are you talking about the New England team that hasn't scored any goals yet in 3 matches?
Yes, that one, and the one that just lost their center forward after 10 minutes in game number 3. In Leo Campana.
Leo Campana is sidelined. That means Maxi Arudi will almost definitely start. And part of that reason, sometimes when the clubs put out these guys for the weekly presser, I mean, you're not going to put a guy out there that, isn't in the squad. And generally, you're putting a guy out there that's going to start. Maxi Arudi was with Caleb.
Maybe. There's gamemanship there. There is absolute gamemanship there.
Well, the thing about Arudi, it's interesting. He's got 70 career goals, which is 5th among active players in MLS. And, he's kind of one of those enigmas. Like he could have, I'm anticipating he'll start, and he could have, he could play an hour of, pretty good football and get clear chances and, maybe do some damage and score the first goal this year for New England. But he can also be really erratic and poor and not always work defensively. So I don't know. Caleb Porter was very positive. He said his team understands these first 3 games. We played 2 of the best teams in the league. We could have beaten Nashville at Nashville. That was the 0-0 draw on opening day. I wanted to play. I clipped something from Caleb Porter because I love the way he prefaced this clip. Frank DeLappa, our friend up at the Boston Globe, he asked this question of Porter about Fofana. Their central defender they both felt was stomped, and it looked like the potential for a straight red card, which wasn't called. And then later in the game, maybe a little earlier in the game, there was a handball in the area called by the referee, who it was Fatis Bazakos, and it was overruled by the video assistant referee. So no penalty for New England. And they lose by a goal. So here's Caleb responding to Frank DeLappa.
To be honest, Frank, we didn't really rewatch it a ton, and think about it a ton. We're trying to, this year, and myself included, I'm the leader, obviously, of the team, not dwell on refereeing decisions or mistakes that the referees are making. We can't do anything about that. It's a waste of time and energy. It's frustrating, for sure, when things like that happen. I felt like we should have gotten at least a draw against Columbus. I did not feel they should have overturned the original call, that it wasn't clear and obvious. But it doesn't do any good to waste time and energy on that. So is it a foul on Mamadou? Yes. It obviously affected him from there. The tough part with the new rule is it's a legitimate foul and it's a legitimate injury, and he has to now, with a legitimate injury, he has to sit out. I don't like that rule. I don't mind the rule, but I hate it in that scenario, if that makes sense, because the rules for players and teams that are stalling, and he clearly was injured. So it just kind of, for me, it's kind of a silly way to approach, to program. You can't, fake an injury, but what happens when a guy's really injured? It's just, I think that part of that rule is really strange.
Well, to be clear and full disclosure, the reason I played that clip, absolutely, Caleb Porter, abolish the rule. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. You know how I feel about this 2-minute rule. And there's a perfect freaking example. The guy had to leave the field. First of all, he was probably red carded, or at least had to be thought about in that manner. So he's not faking it. I'm so, and you tie that plus the 8-second freaking goalkeeper rule that the MLS will at one point, I'm sure, use, not right away, but IFAB.
Well, that's not an MLS only rule. This is an MLS only rule, the one that you're talking about. The 8-second rule is going to be a universal rule.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. Both would be used in the league that we cover. Yes, I understand that. I'm saying, so there's another example. So we've had Wilfred Nancy and Caleb Porter and Pat Noonan and I can't wait till Bruce Arena has to as one of his players yanked off, and play down a man for 2 minutes. Oh, look out for that post-game press conference. Roberto, please be on alert for that. I want to hear what Bruce has to say about it. So to be clear, too, lost to Philadelphia 2-0 at home the last game. The game he's referring to there is Columbus, which was a 1-0 defeat, also at Gillette. And then they had that tie on the road. And Ty Baribo had he's got 6 goals through 3 matches. He scored in the 2-0 win over New England for Philadelphia. And and New England is the only team in MLS that hasn't scored a goal yet. And now they're down their striker. And New York City, by the way, and New England, they play again in like a month, April 19th. We'll go up to Gillette. I don't like when the schedule's like that, because like if somebody had rolled an ankle and they miss this game, that means they could possibly miss that game. And I like when it's more spread out. I'm sure.
Yeah. 30 I would prefer for it to be, if you could, at least within your conference, that it would be like the same schedule for the first half to second half. If you did just like, Actually, I don't know if they do that in Europe or not, but like it's basically you just flip-flop the schedule. It's just sort of like, well, if you play New England at home in game number 3, then in game number 20, I guess, then you're playing them on the road. Third game of the second half of the season.
So somebody, I was in discussion with someone, it might have been Maddie, where the schedule is not fun anymore. And from what I mean by that is, when we first started doing this, Roberto, you played every team. You played the teams in your own conference twice, and sometimes 3 times. Like I look back, the first 3 years, New York City played New England 3 times per season to make up for the 34 games that they needed. And then you'd play 1 crossover game. You would go home 1 year to Seattle, and then the next year you'd go out to Seattle. So it was kind of I don't know if maybe you told me this, but somebody had the idea of 3 conferences. You have 30 teams, go 10, 10, and 10, play 9 times 2, 18, and then plus 20, you play 38 games instead of 34. You could figure that out. Or maybe you at least play most of the teams, and maybe you don't play 1 or 2 teams from the other divisions or something. But
right, you rotate against the other divisions. But yeah, I like to go to different places. I don't want to, play Philadelphia 3 times in a season per se, and not play the Galaxy or play San Diego or play Portland. I like the long road trips to places that we don't see very often. So we haven't been to San Jose in God knows how long. We haven't been to Kansas City since, was it 2018? No, we haven't been out there, or 19. This is not about us.
It might be about you.
Hello?
I'm just saying.
Hello?
No, for the sporting side of it and the ability to play all the different teams, and I think it also provides maybe a more adequate point outcome when everybody's playing the same teams. So,
yeah, but that's not going to. With 30 teams, you're not going to be able to have that. You're not going to be able to have that. Which is, by the way, another reason why Supporter Shield nowhere comes close to MLS Cup as far as a prize, because you're not playing the same schedule.
But if you play 3 conferences, you're coming close to playing everybody every year and having.
But you're not. But coming close isn't playing everybody every year, all year long.
Well, it's a lot closer than it is now.
That it's still
we play
still
6
not right. But
6,
are you trying to say now, because now we're going off subject, but what you're trying to say is that you're going to give anywhere close to equality to the Supporter Shield, the MLS Cup?
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking
that
about.
Was my point.
Yeah, but
are you listening to me?
Yes, it's much more legitimate if you play everybody but 2 teams. Okay? Yes. The answer to your question is yes. As
so
opposed to
where do you equate Supporter Shield versus Supporter Shield versus MLS Cup?
You play 6 crossover games right now. The Supporter Shield is not meaningless, but it doesn't mean nearly as much as MLS Cup. If you're playing every team in the league at least once, which you increased it, play 38 games and get rid of Leagues Cup. And now you're talking, man. Play 38 games, and then you'll play everybody in the league. Now, granted, it'll be home one year on a crossover and on the road the other year, which is that's a slight disadvantage. That's not exactly true to form for Supporter Shield, maybe, but because in the Premier League,
29. Explain to me how 29 times 2 is 38.
9 times 2 is 18.
29. 29. You said that you're playing everybody. It's 38 teams.
I want 38.
Yeah, but you're not playing everybody if it's you're doing that, are you?
So in your own conference, there's 9 teams you have to play. Play each one of them twice. That's 18. And if you play the other 10, you play 10 in the other conference and 10 in the third conference, that's 20. 20 plus 18 is 38 games. And you've played everybody. Right?
But okay. Okay. Now, I see what you mean, but it wasn't home and away, because there's that as well.
No,
so the fact that you might be playing FC Cincinnati and Cincinnati versus playing New England at home, there's a difference there.
That's what I said. That's exactly what I said. It's not exact because of the home away every other year thing. That's what I said. Okay. So now I've got to
under your
now I got to go back into the comment.
Re-ask the question.
So Quinny, was I clear on that one? I see you confirmed that Roberto was clear even when he wasn't.
But here's the thing. So here's the question that I want to re-ask you. Under your scenario, under your schedule scenario,
all right,
where do you put Supporter Shield versus MLS Cup?
Boy, these kind of questions don't always. I'd say still MLS Cup.
You had to think about this?
Yes, because I don't think about. Don't you know me by now? I don't think about stuff like that.
I'm just letting everybody else know. Oh, I know you. I'm just letting everybody else know who you are. Not me.
I don't
know
care
who you are.
I don't care who wins MVP. I don't care who is on the match day of the week team, because there's 5 guys that they leave out every week. I don't care about those Supporter Shield versus MLS.
I'm not talking about individual honors. I'm talking about this is a team prize. This is a team prize. Okay. So you have elevated.
But why does it matter? Which is more important? Who gives a
because it's a subject of controversy.
I may be
for
cursing
a lot of fans, who, especially the Euro snobs, and I'll call them that, who believe that the real prize in MLS is the Supporter Shield and not an MLS Cup. And I will totally disagree with that. And anybody who follows hockey, and I don't know if you follow the NHL or not, but I do, okay? And nobody in their right mind, because this is equal, okay? This is exactly the same thing as MLS. Nobody in their right mind would ever equate the President's Cup. The President's Trophy would never equate the President's Trophy with a Stanley Cup. The Rangers won the President's Trophy last year, and their season was not good because they got eliminated by the Florida Panthers in the semifinals or the conference finals, and the Florida Panthers went on to win the Stanley Cup. They're the champions. Nobody cares that the Rangers won the President's Trophy. And, and nobody should care that somebody won the Supporters' Shield in comparison to MLS Cup. That's all I'm saying.
Holy shite, man. That was 10 minutes of, God, wasting my...
It was great.
Oh, my God, because nobody remembers the Supporters' Shield winners anyway, Roberto. Gee whiz, it's not even a question.
Well, finally, you're on the right side of this.
Oh,
but it took you this long to find. When you were trying to elevate it and equate
Just a couple other notes before we get into kicking it around, or otherwise known in this podcast, kicking Roberto in the arse. Greg Berhalter got his first win. Chicago won at Dallas 3-1. The Galaxy are the first team to ever lose their first opening three matches the season after winning MLS Cup. And St. Louis, we talked about New England hasn't scored a goal. They're the only team in MLS that hasn't scored a goal in the first three matches. Well, St. Louis, that beat the Galaxy 3-0, are the only MLS team not to allow a goal for the first three matches. So how about all that?
So can I give a little context? The Galaxy obviously is putting a lot more focus on the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and they played a really good game against Herediano, coming back from they were down 1-0 in the first leg, won the second leg 4-1, and they played really, really well. And so
they looked like the Galaxy.
Them.
Yeah, they looked like the 2024 Galaxy last night. I mean, that was really impressive. That win in the CONCACAF, and that's their first win of the year. Interesting. They had lost 4 in a row because, including the first game in Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
Let's see what else happened here. San Diego, the expansion side, is 2-0-1 in their first 3 games. NYCFC, just a little fun fact. You know, I like the fun facts. One of only 2 other teams to go unbeaten through their first 3 games as an expansion side. I bet you remember that, because as bad as 2015 was at the end of the day, 1 win and 2 draws in the first 3 matches.
Yeah, and then it sort of fell apart.
Yeah.
And then it went downhill very quickly after that.
Atlanta, with all the zillions that they paid for attacking players, have been shut out for consecutive games for the first time in 3 years.
And guess who they play this weekend?
Yeah, and they play Miami this weekend, who are the last team. Or they have 3 red cards in consecutive games. Another fun fact involving New York City FC. The last time that happened was in 2021 to New York City FC getting red cards in 3 consecutive games. How about that? And then
speaking of Champions Cup, hold on, because now we have to make another. So they play in Jamaica tonight at the office.
Right after us.
Who made the trip? Lionel Messi. He made the trip. I would presume he's going to play because he hasn't played the last 2 weeks, so he's got to be fit to be able to play if he's making the trip. Can you imagine? I mean, that is going to be great.
Yeah, well, there's 30.
I mean, I hope that he plays tonight, and it's a party at the office. And you know, if it's a party at the office, it's a party.
Well, that's right after us. I think right at 8:00. So hang in there with us. Consider us your perfect lead-in to Miami in CONCACAF Champions Cup. And certainly we hope that Messi will play. He's only played in about 50% of all games that he's been eligible to play in for Miami since his arrival in Leagues Cup 2023. And Vancouver 3-0 for the first time ever in MLS for them. And Ryan Gaul, the knee injury he suffered, apparently is not as serious as first thought.
Yay.
So he's only going to miss a few weeks.
But he didn't play last night. And I mean...
Thank God the guy from Jersey did.
Yeah, I don't get this, okay? Because I saw the games. I saw the Tigres game against Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And then Cruz Azul. They won easily and handily, 4-1.
Yeah.
Who did they play?
Seattle.
I'm just like blanking. Seattle. Right there. Yes, thank you. Okay, but not only did they win. Okay, you could see how superior they were. All right, and it's a pet peeve of mine.
But please don't spend 5 minutes on this.
No, I'm not. I'm just. But let me talk for a bit.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
and maybe we're going to go ahead and talk about it more.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. It'll be
Okay.
a lead-in, and then
Okay.
you can really bark about it there.
Okay, so we'll go there. But what Vancouver was able to do, to go, now they didn't play in Monterrey, they played in Torreon, in Santos Laguna Stadium. And the reason they did that, by the way, this doesn't only happen to New York City, and it doesn't only happen in MLS. All right. The reason that they couldn't play the game in Monterrey was because Shakira had the stadium. And so they had to go to Torreon because they weren't going to play in Tigres' stadium, El Volcán. So they went to Torreon, and Vancouver went, and they played them more than even, and they were winning 2-1 until a penalty late in the game, and Monterrey tied it. But on the away goal rule, it was Vancouver who advances, and I'm like shocked. I'm shocked, and I'm thrilled for this, and I'm happy for Vancouver.
I thought
really am.
The irony here to me was that Monterrey couldn't play in their stadium because of this concert, and last year in the playoffs, Vancouver got booted out of BC Place because of a motocross event, and then they tore apart Portland at Providence Park 5-0.
I know
It was such impactful that Phil Neville, the first day of preseason this year, made like a little placard and he put it up right on the screen. The first thing everybody saw was Vancouver 5, Portland nothing. Let's go from here. Lionel Messi not in the starting 11.
Didn't help.
Lionel Messi not in the starting 11 against Cavalier. He is on the bench. So it's Suarez, Ruiz, Allende, who's an exciting young player, Segovia. Those two guys, they won't be around long. Redondo, Busquets, Alba, Allen, Falcon. I like him. The Chilean at center back. And then Frey, who's turned out to be a really good back, and Ustari in goal.
So that's their top lineup.
Yeah, they're going with their boys, and if Messi plays, it will be off the bench. All right, let's kick it around, Roberto. All right, I love these things. The Athletic. I know we're both subscribers. It is behind a paywall, a lot of this. I think it's worth it because of the stories are so well written, not covering just MLS, but all of football, global soccer, global football, whatever you want to call it. Some of the best writers in our country, and I think globally as well, contribute to the Athletic. Anyway, they have an anonymous survey of MLS sporting executives. 21 out of the 30 teams were represented in this survey, and they did it in two parts, Roberto. So I'm going to go over some of the ones that I thought were particularly, eye-opening maybe, or just interesting.
Okay. Where are you starting?
I'm going to start in part one. And one of the questions asked was, who is the most talented player in the league not named Messi? And there was a runaway winner, Evander. How about that?
Yeah. It's interesting. The thing with Evander is that he might be mercurial. I guess is the way to look at it.
That's a great word. That's a great word to describe somebody who you can't freaking understand what they're going to do from day to day, or moment to moment. Yes.
Yeah. And so that's the situation with him. But as far as the talent that he has and everything, yeah, I absolutely get that that he would be number one.
I think the important thing here is it wasn't unanimous, but it was a pretty high majority. Now, most underrated player. Show the chart here, Shane. Most underrated player, Darlington Nagbe. But look who makes the list. Keaton Parks of the New York City Football Club.
Yeah, he got one vote there.
There were a bunch with one, and Darlington Nagbe led the way. And I think Nagbe's been around so long, and I think we all know him to be really vital. I don't know about the underrated tag with Nagbe, because I really do believe that people understand that without him on these teams that he's played in, I mean, he's won so many championships in college. Portland, Columbus, who am I leaving out? Atlanta United. He's won 3 MLS Cups with 3 different.
Yeah, and I agree with you on this. I don't think he's underrated. I think that everybody who understands MLS, understands the sport, understands that he's probably one of the best midfielders we have in the United States. And the only reason that he's not on the United States national team is because he doesn't want to play national team games. So that's the only reason, because as far as quality is concerned, we know how good he is. I remember Patrick Vieira, he used to tell us the only player that he would game plan for was Darlington Nagbe.
Let's get Keaton Parks. There's a little quote from one of the executives. So the quotes are so if you go down to the bottom, one CSO, that's Chief Soccer Officer, that's CSO, said he was shocked that Keaton Parks has not been called into even one of the smaller national team camps, considering his form in New York. So I know there have been shout outs from New York City supporters at times about Keaton Parks not being included as well. And I think Keaton is, I don't want to say he's content not being selected, but he's a focal point of what New York City does. He's got a wonderful contract. He's got a new young family. I have a feeling he's really happy in life. That's my feeling.
I'm sure he'd like to, and maybe Mauricio Pochettino is gonna look at him, and when the Gold Cup comes around, and says, maybe we should give him a call in and see what he actually has, because that's what that Gold Cup is going to be for.
Yeah, and you have to perform with your team. You have to perform at a high level with your team. Who is the best coaching or executive hire? Pascal Janssen finished 4th, and Ronnie Dyla finished 5th. So Pascal beat out Ronnie, the ex-New York City manager who got hired back into MLS with Atlanta United, and Pascal getting his first win last week. Anything else in part one that strikes you, Roberto?
Not as much part one. I was more focused on part two.
Oh, part two is far more fun. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, like, who was the best non-Messi attacker? Dennis Bouanga, and he was a runaway. Yeah, I mean, that was
that's part one.
Obvious.
You're still in
part one. I'm just looking at that. And the other thing, I was surprised. I'll just give you one more. I was surprised that when they were talking about the best goaltenders in the league, that Matt Freese wasn't mentioned.
Except read the list of 5 that are there. Come on, you can't argue the 5 that are listed. Go.
I mean, I'm looking for it actually right now.
Because the last one listed, the number 5 keeper is Hugo Lloris. Now, if Freese falls a little bit behind Hugo Lloris, then I don't think we have to. And Kalina, he proved to be a very, very good keeper. I don't know. Is Zach Steffen in there? Are you looking at it or not?
I'm trying to find it, and it's not the last one.
All right. Anyway, let's go to.
You sent me the wrong way. Oh, here it is. Who's the best goalkeeper? So number 1 was Roman Berkey.
Can't argue that.
Okay, Kalina number 2, Schulte number 3, Andre Blake, and Hugo Lloris.
Yeah. So what? You can't go too crazy that Freese is not there. I'm sorry.
Well, but nobody voted for him. These are all the votes.
It's
but
21,
nobody voted for Freese.
21 out of 30. Well, yeah. Well, you already read the list of the goalkeepers. I'm not. You can't argue with the fact that those guys were listed ahead of.
I'm not trying to take anything away from this 5. I'm not taking, but I'm just saying.
And nothing away from Matt Freese, who has been, he was the MVP last year, unless you wanted to say Santi Rodriguez was. There you go. Part 2. So the question was, and this is a good one, asking the executives about the potential move from the fall calendar to the international calendar, where you're now playing in what could be, pretty chilly conditions coming out into January and February, depending on how the break would go. One executive said, here's a quote, "We have to do it." Now, there were other, but that's the one that I picked out. It's like one executive said, "We have to do it." That's pretty exclamatory. It's like, there we go.
Well, the reason that they said that they had to do it, and I think the most important reason for them, was the fact that they want to have the calendar at the same time as Europe, because it's not the same time as South America, by the way. And people seem to forget that they don't play, that neither Argentina or Brazil care about the European calendar. But they figure that it'll be better for transfers. And that was the main reason why they wanted to do that change.
I think there were 2 main reasons. I think from what I remember, now I don't have it in front of me, I just remember reading, it's in May, when you're playing the finals, you're not competing with college football and the NFL. And I think that's a pretty good point.
Well, it's only college football because it's not really the NFL at that point because
Sure
you're
it
not
is.
playing Sunday. You're not playing Sundays. You're playing Saturdays, and or Fridays, and they're playing on non-NFL days. But college football is obviously a formidable opponent on television, no doubt. Having said that, I think the more important reason, and I give this validity, a lot of validity, because I'm one of those people who would prefer to keep the calendar as is. But I understand the other side, and I understand this point especially. It's not good that during the playoffs, the most important, most exciting part of your season,
this is where
there are two FIFA breaks, and you have to respect those breaks.
So that's 3 reasons, and that one is really important. I mean, that's like it does. The momentum crashes, and you ask anybody who doesn't follow, we're in there, so we're still doing things in between and all.
Ask
but
Bruce.
The people that don't follow MLS closely, but enjoy playoff sports, right? I watch the NHL playoffs. I watch the NBA playoffs. I don't watch the regular season of either of those sports because that's just the way it is for me right now. So the people that might do that with MLS, they're like, oh, screw it.
New England was off 21 days. There have been when New York City went over there and tied them and beat them in penalty kicks. And they were the Supporter Shield winners. And so, the fact that that's a major disadvantage for teams, I fully understand that. Now, if they do go to a winter schedule, they're going to break sometime in early December, and they're going to come back late February, which is basically the off season that we have now.
Right. Exactly. So it seems like it could work, and obviously accommodations somehow have to be made for the Montreal, Minnesotas, and those sorts of climates. And NFL, by the way, just go back in December. Aren't they playing on Saturdays? Don't they start playing on Saturdays later in the season?
They do mid to late December, and they but has not affected MLS.
Okay. But it could, depending on.
Well, depending how, if they want to go and play Christmas, and
Well, if they have to play 38 games in my conference alignment, then
but there'd be no leagues. There'd be no Leagues Cup, and so in your alignment, in your fantasy world, there's no Leagues Cup. Yeah, and so therefore, I like Leagues Cup because I grew up in Mexico, and I like to see the competition between Mexican teams and
it's not
American
working out.
Teams.
I think a majority of the executives that were asked that question too, have predicted its death in not too many years.
The Mexican side of the ledger, it's not been a fair competition because all the games are played here. So, but now they've made it fairer for those teams, a lot less travel. So we'll see what works out. But everybody who we've spoken to is like, why don't they play? The best way to make this tournament fair is to play games in Mexico. And everybody's like, nah, we can't make money there. Screw it. It ain't happening.
Is USL Division I a threat? Remember, USL's come out and they're going to have a Super League and then probably try to do Pro Rel.
Yeah.
They're hoping 2027. Here's a quote from one of the MLS sporting executives, not defined what position, not defined what this is an anonymous survey. Quote, "It's stupid. Just effing stop. You have an established league that's beginning to thrive. And who are you?" That was an MLS sporting executive.
And I disagree. I disagree with him. I disagree with him. Let them try if they want to try. Now, are they going to be able to succeed? Who knows? Are they going to wind up doing what the WHA did, what the ABA did, what the AFL did, which is be able to compete for a little while, get to a point of where you can't ignore it anymore, but they're not going to be competing all the time and they get absorbed into MLS and all of that? that might wind up happening. I mean, that's happened 3 out of 3 times so far with other leagues.
But this is different, right? Because there's different tiers of USL. Right?
Yeah, I mean, they could have their own pro. They could have their own pro rel within their own league. But also they don't have the handicap of MLS of the salary cap. So if they wanted to get, and I've always made this argument with the pro rel guys on Twitter, which I stopped arguing with, but the argument was you want MLS to do that. MLS is not doing this, and I understand the reason why. Go build your own Division I league. Go build your own. Go find your own billionaires. There's enough. Go find your own billionaires and build another league and compete against MLS and get the best players and put MLS out of business.
But
stop crying.
A more realistic alternative is something it's been in existence for a while. They will also take some cities that are playing in the championship. They will move into the top tier. I'm certain that's the way to go. And then they'll find other out. It's very interesting. So these executives were pretty much like, hey, we're not too concerned about it. Don Garber, in his most recent public comments, all of a sudden started talking about, well, I know we have 30 teams, but we can have a lot more. He didn't say a lot more. He basically intimated that they're going to continue to grow this Major League Soccer. And it seemed to me, because it was very closely associated with when the announcement came out about the D1 status for USL, that MLS is going to maybe try to go out into markets that they think USL is going to try to capture and see if they can get their franchises there first. And then it'd be, whatever.
Sacramento, Detroit, Phoenix.
Vegas, baby.
Vegas.
Let's get a second team in San Diego. We could have 2 teams. You can have 2 teams that exist, right? You had 3 teams playing in New York City, baseball teams for a long time. Why not, man? Why not?
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, here's the last one. We'll close with this one, Roberto. So the question to the executives was, Major League Soccer, how do we get more people to watch? One of the sporting executives from one of the MLS teams, 21 out of 30 respondents out of the 30 teams anonymously, the quote, they have to end the deal with Apple. It's bad for fans. So that's one of our executives.
So let's dive into that a bit. And I'm not going short on this. Okay, so let's dive into this. When Apple took over the rights 3 years ago, or Univision, ESPN, and Fox were offered opportunities to stay in the game, right? To stay broadcasting. And the only one that wound up doing it was Fox. And they have basically a game a week, either on Channel 5 here in New York, the big Fox. Sometimes it's on FS1, and all the games are in Spanish on Fox Deportes. Okay, so ESPN was offered basically the same deal. So ESPN came back and said, we'll continue broadcasting MLS. We're very interested in continuing broadcasting MLS. Now, I spoke with a very high executive who was intimately involved with the contract negotiations, okay? So this is a personal conversation that I had. I remember I used to work there, okay? And so they were told that what we want to do is that we'll pay, a nominal fee or whatever that is, but we want games that are behind Apple's paywall. And Apple and MLS said, no, we're not going to give you those. Says, we'll give you games that are in front of our paywall. So they're free on Apple, but you can broadcast them as well. I said, we're not interested in doing that. We're not going to pay for that. So what we'll do, if that's what you want to offer us, it's not ideal, but we'd like to keep it on the channel because it's good programming for us. We'll do a revenue share with you. And MLS and Apple said no. And so because of that, ESPN is out. Had they given ESPN, which I think that they should have, okay, if they had given ESPN a game of the week, 34 weeks, one of the games that's behind Apple's paywall that they can broadcast either on ESPN, ESPN2, or ABC, which would even be better, I think that would have been good for MLS. But MLS sometimes thinks that they're smarter than everybody else. And it didn't work out because what they need is that they need ESPN for this. Because even if they only get 300,000 viewers on ESPN or 500,000 viewers on ABC, okay, at least you're talking about this and it's on a mainstream station And, maybe part of the deal is, okay, you got to do highlights on SportsCenter, or you give them highlights. So ESPN didn't even have rights, and I don't know if they resolved this or not. They didn't have rights for highlights, okay? Only on the news shows. So like Fútbol Américas, right, which is a great show with Hércules Gómez, and they couldn't show highlights. They didn't have the rights. So MLS was keeping everything close to the vest when they've got to be relevant everywhere, and they made themselves irrelevant in some areas where they could have had a lot more relevancy.
Well, good description. No, that's very good. And I would imagine that as time goes on, and if that becomes more apparent, then that would be a more favorable way to go, that there can be a renegotiation process in here somewhere along the line. What do we know about the Apple contract? After 5 years, I
think it's after, because they can revisit it after 5 years. But this is something that they can add in. I don't think that this is you can always go and in some cases, do different things, and especially if it's going to wind up in some way benefiting Apple. And it would benefit Apple if more people were just watching games, period. So,
all I know is
love me, hate me, don't ignore me.
It's like
when they're very much in the ignore me part.
How many times have you gone into, I don't go into a pub every night of the week, contrary to some popular belief, but I've never walked into a sporting establishment, and seen an MLS game on, ever. And it's been during MLS. You know what I've done? I bring my computer, I pour a glass of red wine, or they pour it for me, and I put on Apple to watch the game with the little AirPods on.
Yeah. And where did we see a game? I'm trying to remember. It was in LA. Was it LA? No, it was in Miami when we were in Fort Lauderdale. Remember that they put the 2 games up. Now I don't remember if that was a
Spanish. It was a Spanish station. It was because I remember there were subtitles or something. I think it was in Spanish. So who would carry that? 2DN?
If it was maybe it was a CCL game, Champions Cup game rather. Maybe it was that, and it wasn't an MLS game.
I can't recall walking in and sometimes I'm, that's what you're looking for, or you ask somebody, can you put the MLS game on? Nobody's got Apple, and I think I told you this, and this story is like 2 years old. I would imagine it's still part of the MLS establishment of people within MLS who traveled around the country in an effort to get bars to get Apple and offer them discounts, maybe even offer them free service, whatever, just to have Apple so that MLS games could actually be shown in these sports bars.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the supporters, like New York City supporters go to several bars, especially when New York City's playing away and they have these events, and so they watch the game there. So some of those places, absolutely have it, but it's rare. And
I wonder how
MLS has to do more of that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know how they pipe that in. I wonder if they do it through a computer, because
you have to do it through Apple TV.
I know, but I'm saying I wonder if the bar actually has Apple TV, or if somebody brings a computer and they pipe it in that way.
Well, they can do that as well.
So Nick Cushing, former New York City FC coach, it is official that he is the interim head coach at Manchester City, where he coached for 7 years, won 6 trophies. And he replaces a good friend of his, Gareth Taylor, who'd been there since 2020, replaced Nick when Nick moved on to the New York City Football Club as an assistant to Ronnie Dyla, then took over, then was sacked at the end of last year. So that's happening. And what's interesting there, Roberto, Chelsea leads the league. And in the space of less than 2 weeks, Chelsea's shown themselves to be the best team in the WSL. But in the space of less than 2 weeks, they're going to meet Chelsea 4 times with Nick. The League Cup final, which is this weekend.
Yeah.
Then Champions League, 2 legs of Champions League. So Man City faces Chelsea, and then a regular season game. That's all happening within 2 weeks. So it'll be interesting to track.
They'll become very familiar with each other.
I think so. What else? Nico?
What does it say? Familiarity breeds contempt.
I don't know if I buy that. Nico Benalcazar, one of our favorite former homegrowns. He's now playing for Orange County out in Southern California, and USL Championship, scored the game-winning goal in their match over the weekend. How cool is that? What else? 7 healthcare professionals in Argentina on trial accused of negligence in the death of Diego Maradona. boy, I find these things really remarkable to read about and study, because that is wild. That they're basically saying you killed this guy through how you treated him and medically. So there's psychiatrists that are of the 7. There's like a psychiatrist. I mean, what that sounds.
And I mean, he's a god there, and so
right.
Somebody's going to be found guilty.
And when Twitter went down,
I wouldn't want to be on the wrong end of this trial.
Oh, I'm going to leave Twitter alone. Or excellent. No, I wouldn't either, man. 25 years in prison. That's the maximum sentence for some of these people.
Wow.
And finally, we'll end with this. The Eagles have officially accepted. Did you hear this? They've officially accepted their invitation to the White House. So there you go. So they won the Super Bowl.
They didn't want to go. I don't know what happened.
Well, the reason I'm bringing it up is that it's incredible. It's incredible that that's a story. It's just incredible, but it's the sign of the times, and that's all I'll say.
It's a sign of the times. It really, really is. I just wanted to make one more point, because it was back to the survey, and we were talking about the Champions Cup. And there was one of the propositions as far as the salary cap is concerned, one, that it had to be elevated, and then 2, that they should stop with all this discretionary money and how you spend your money. So, and we've had this conversation in the past. If your salary cap's going to be $25 million, let them spend the $25 million however the hell they want. They can still have their 3 DPs. They count X amount against the cap, but let them spend the rest of it. If they want to spend $1 million on a DP, let them spend $1 million. But if they want to spend $25 million on 25 players at $1 million apiece, let them do it. And this is part of the reason why the Mexican teams are always better than the MLS teams. 1, they normally have a higher payroll. But 2, if they don't, it's only because 3 guys on the MLS team is being paid a hell of a lot more than whatever is being paid in Mexico. But the rest of it, it's the other way around. It flips it. So you may be very top heavy with 3 guys, like Inter Miami per se, right? And then, but the rest of the squad, 8 versus 8, it's flipped over the other way. And so it's hard to compete that way. You may have Messi, Suarez, and Busquets, and even Alba. So let's say you got the big 4. They still have 8 players that are better than your other 8 players. And so, or 7 players, 7. So they've got to figure out a way to change this, because they're getting smoked basically every night playing in Mexico, except for Vancouver, who pulled off a miracle last night in Torreon against Monterrey. But they're getting smoked. I mean, 3-1, 4-1.
Brian White scores the game-winning goal, or the goal that allowed them to advance, and
series-winning goal, if you'd like.
Yeah, sure, that'd be it. And I like to bring him up because I know him a bit, and he played at PDA in Jersey, the club I worked at. But I think to add on to that, he's getting another shot with the U.S. men's national team. Remember, he's the guy that scored the goal off of that Diego Luna assist when Luna had everything stuck in his nose and broken his nose and everything else when he came back against, I think that was Costa Rica. And, considering there's injuries, he's got Josh Sargent to deal with now, and Patrick Ajaman, who was also selected. So I'd like to – I'm intrigued to see how that's going to be handled as well, and how Mauricio Pochettino decides which striker is going to, fit the best for him.
Right. So there's 2 major injuries. One is Balogun, and the other is Ricardo Pepi. So this opens up the door for White and for others. I was sad not to see Alejandro Sendejas not make it. He's playing really, really well for America. Scored a goal last night in America's 4-0 victory over Chivas. There's just a lot of talent on the wings for the U.S. national team. It's hard to say who do you take off to put Sendejas on, really. But I'm very happy to see Diego Luna on the team. I really, really am. I think he's a special player, and he's not long for MLS. So folks out there in Sandy, Utah, and Salt Lake City, enjoy him while you can. He's got a great future. I really love the way he plays, and I think Pochettino does too, by the way. So we'll see what happens there.
Pochettino likes him because he went out there with a broken nose. I'm not saying he doesn't like other aspects of his game, but that's who you want on your freaking team, man. That's who you want on your team.
Put me in.
Telling you, it's a seminal moment for him where he said, I'm going back in. Pochettino was not putting him back in. He said, no, don't worry about it, man. You got a big season. He was concerned about his RSL season. He said, no, you don't need to. And just forcing his way sort of back in. And
then he makes the assist, right? Immediately he goes and he makes that assist for the goal. But he only left him on until halftime. I mean, great. It's great. Right. I love to see it because he got screwed over by the Olympic team. He definitely should have been there. They screwed him over. Pochettino's taking him under his wing. I think that's fantastic. And I hope he gets a chance to show what he can do in the game against Panama. And then if they either Mexico or Canada.
All right. Well, they're going to play Mexico or Canada in the second game anyway. So, yeah. So 8 minutes in, no goals scored yet down there in Jamaica. Cavalier, I love the name of the club, Inter Miami. No Messi in the 11. He's on the bench. I would guess that if Miami, they're up 2-0 on aggregate, I would guess that if there's no chance of them not advancing, he's just going to sit on the bench and root for his boys and maybe play in MLS this weekend. Who knows? All right, Roberto, that's it for us. We're on at 7:15 p.m. Eastern with our live commentary. Roberto on the Spanish side, myself on the English side. It's on the NYCFC app. It's nycfc.com/radio. It's on the TuneIn app. And you can also hear it, the English on Apple TV, MLS Season Pass. And that's going to do it for us. We'll see if New York City can make it back-to-back victories, Roberto.
That's it. And then we're coming back Monday, right? You're busy.
We're coming on Monday because, I'll describe it then. Gonna go to the Sphere, but we'll talk more about that later. All right,
Vegas,
Roberto,
baby.
Thanks, and everybody, thanks for joining. Thanks for all the comments. Great show, guys. You're right. You've got very good taste. That came from a couple of people. So for Roberto, I'm Glenn. Enjoy, everybody. See you.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast NYCFC Views on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.